So a lot of the dads that I've spoken with, and in my own experience, when I became a father, when I decided to have a family, I had this noble and kind of lofty vision for how I was going to show up as a dad, and I set this really high bar in terms of the ways that I would show up, and some of that was motivated in how I wanted to show up as a parent for my kids in ways that I didn't feel like I had gotten from my parents, or things that, like, I didn't want to repeat my dad's way of bottling up his anger and then blowing up at different times. And so I told myself, I'm not gonna do those things. And as I got into the thick of it, kind of years into fathering, and even kind of earlier on, there were ways in which the journey of parenting, of fatherhood, pushed me to my own limits, and in the process exposed these aspects of myself, these unintegrated wounds, my own baggage from my childhood, and the ways that I was still holding on to or carrying some of these old wounds from my own childhood experiences. And it wasn't until I got pushed to those edges that some of those places of shadow or darkness kind of started to emerge. The ways that I would also blow up at my own daughter when she was a young child and push my buttons. And our kids are really, really good at triggering us and of exposing these unintegrated parts of ourselves, the ways that our own wounds are still living inside of us. And it's not really until we get into that the thick of parenthood that a lot of those things get brought up to the surface. And for me, and a lot of men that I've worked with, there's this moment where I felt frustrated with myself, and I felt disappointed with myself. It's like, how am I still repeating the same things that I swore I wasn't going to do as a dad? And I found myself feeling at times like the apple hadn't fallen that far from the tree. And I think there was this, and it continues to be, this reconciliation process for me as a father, where I have to recognize that this situation where it's only through the process of being a father, of parenting, that a lot of these parts of myself that are still wounded, that are still unintegrated, even get brought into the light. Prior to becoming a dad, there was no circumstance that was I guess necessarily potent enough at times to repeatedly bring these things to the surface for me to really look at and work with. And I think there are certain aspects of the parenting experience that it's only living in that dynamic again, of those family dynamics that are present when you've got parents and young children, that we actually get to kind of reopen some of these closed off parts of ourselves that we maybe haven't really leaned into since we were young children ourselves. And so there's this reconciliation of oh my gosh, I'm repeating the same mistakes, or I'm showing up in these unconscious ways as a dad. I'm hurting my child. I'm wounding my own kids. And I think in those moments it's really important to extend ourselves some grace, that we are going to make mistakes, that we have our imperfections as parents. And at the same time, I think it's also really important to lean in to those edges, to really use the opportunity that our children are offering us of triggering us, pushing our buttons and exposing these places where we are unconscious, and consciously choosing to do work on ourselves, to look, to be curious about why do I get triggered? What is it about the situation that is really getting under my skin? And what's going on there, and allowing ourselves to look a layer or a few layers deeper, not at what's happening in the underlying, what's happening in the situation, but what are the underlying dynamics within myself that are causing me to have such an overblown reaction relative to the circumstances. And then bringing awareness and an intention to heal and to do our own work on those edges that our kids are helping expose for us. It's one of the beautiful gifts that our children offer us, is giving us a mirror to look and see where we still have work to do. And when we do that work, it can be extremely rewarding in terms of how much differently it enables us to choose to show up in the future. So that's just one piece of this parenting journey and this challenge and this kind of reconciliation process that I find myself going through. It's an ongoing process. As my kids get older and the conflicts change, the ways my buttons get pressed changed. Different pieces of my own shadow are getting brought up to the surface again, and it's an opportunity. And I often forget, but whenever I have the opportunity to really choose and or I'm offered the choice essentially of being able to start doing my work again on some of these parts of myself, I think that's the edge that we have to lean into, while also giving ourselves some grace, forgiving ourselves for the mistakes that we are bound to end up making as parents. Hope that helps and serves. Thanks for listening. Take care.